Hello and welcome to Your Neighborhood Show. I'm Carolyn and I've started this podcast because I'm really passionate about building community and I want to bring out stories from our neighborhoods about connection as well as disconnection. And it's come from my own life's journey of growing up in Mumbai, India, in a very connected neighborhood where pretty much everyone knew everyone. Then I came to Australia in 1988 and over my 22-year marriage got inadvertently disconnected, and then realizing this and wanting to make good my life again. And so I went out on this journey of building a support network for myself. And in the process, I realized that it was a pretty serious situation out there, that there were many others like myself that also feel disconnected at times in their lives. And so the aim of the podcast is basically to draw out those stories of connection and disconnection so that we kind of normalize and be okay with being disconnected at some time in our life, because we all go through things in our lives and it's quite normal. But how do we overcome that? And so that's the aim of the podcast. Welcome again. Our guest today is Marty Richards, and Marty is the owner of Blackstar, a lovely little cafe in West End, Brisbane, where we both live. And I've only recently met Marty about 2 months ago whilst I was having breakfast at Marty's cafe in West End with my son, Daniel. And we were just chatting, and then the next thing I know, Daniel's leaned over and he's chatting with the guy on the next table, which happens to be Marty, and they're having this robust conversation about stuff. And then I picked up on a few words, and one of them was community development. And of course, that's a buzzword for me. So I thought, this fellow might be one to have on my podcast. And so I asked him, and here he is. So welcome, Marty.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, it's so lovely. You know, in the last 2 months that I've been interviewing people, I've kind of realized something that I didn't think I would get for myself out of these conversations. And that is that I've been getting present to my own times in my life when I've been disconnected right through the time I was young. And isn't that funny? From the sharing of somebody else, you get present to your own, and in a way kind of helps me just relive them and realize that, you know, in those times when I felt alone, there were lots of other people also feeling alone. and that's obviously the aim of this podcast, is to share that everybody feels alone at some point in their life.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling right now, first of all? I know you're a little bit nervous.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay, good.
This is fine. A little bit nervous.
Yes, that's not abnormal.
I'm excited though as well. Like, it's been awesome just to think about my life a bit. You know, we had a preliminary chat about it all, and I feel like the same. It's going to help me think a bit more about my life and where I'm up to and what's happened. So it's been good so far. Looking forward to today too. Yeah.
Thank you. That's so beautiful, because a lot of people have had the last 3 have had that same experience. They get present to their life in a way that they didn't before. You kind of forget, you know, or you put it up. You don't forget, but you kind of it's not in your your awareness right there. So good to hear. Talking about being alone, because as I said, I get reminded of my own aloneness, and I remember talking to you when we first started talking, and you said to me that there was, in your early years in Whyalla, that's South Australia, Whyalla, isn't it? Whyalla is where you grew up, your childhood. There, yeah. Oh, you were born there as well. Okay. Yeah. Was there a time in your early childhood years when you felt alone?
Yeah, the memory that I have that is popping, I guess, it maybe when I was young, I didn't even remember it, but as I get older, I remember a time very early on where I was alone in the cot, actually crying in the cot, which is crazy. I can remember that, but that stuck with me over the years more and more, that sense of aloneness. Like, and I've had kids as well. I know my kids have had that anxiety of being alone in their rooms, and as much as you try to be there for them, it's still like,
Yeah, because
scary being alone, like as a baby. Like I remember that. Yeah.
isn't that amazing? That's like I wouldn't think that we'd be able to have that kind of a memory of going back to when we were in a cot. The earliest memory.
It's almost like a dream. I almost remember it almost like a dream. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And then you both your grandmothers were quite close by in Whyalla, and you all used to.
Yeah, both sets of grandparents. I had one. My dad's parents were in Whyalla itself. Whyalla's like a regional country town, a bit like Toowoomba. It's a mining town. Yeah, my grandparents on my dad's side, they lived there near us. And then my mum's parents, they were maybe an hour's drive in the country. Yeah.
So,
in the Flinders Ranges, yeah.
Right. Do you all visit your mum's mother often?
Yeah, often, yeah.
And what about cousins and...
Cousins, not as many. They were more in Adelaide, which is about 5 hours drive away, yeah.
And you've got a sister?
Yeah, my sister's Jo. Yeah, she's 2 years older than me, yeah.
Yes. So your childhood in Whyalla sounds like it was quite secure and lovely, other than your... Not that you
other than that memory.
Yeah.
Well, looking back on it, like it was like quite suburban, and we lived like an ordinary life, but it was a quiet town, and I remember it being very hot, and so indoors a lot, and my dad worked shift work, and when he wasn't doing shift work, he was often on 2 or 3 week trips. He was working for BHP. It was a mining town actually, so he'd often go on the ships connected with BHP like for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So there was that memory of being alone with mum.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And my parents had been, I've only realised later in life, they'd been through quite a lot as young people, before meeting and having us. So,
you just realized that about your parents?
Well, I didn't know at the time. As a child or as a teenager, you don't quite kind of get the implications until you're an adult and a parent.
Yes.
So yeah, looking back, like they went through a lot in their teen years and as children as well. So yeah.
And that kind of informs how they are as parents.
Yeah. And I think like looking back on it now from a bigger picture perspective, like the experiment of, I guess, the way suburban life is and nuclear families, it's quite an experiment in the scheme of human history. It's only really recent that we separate and follow jobs into housing the way we do. And, you know, mum was doing the best she could and dad wasn't always there. And, you know, I sensed that it was probably a difficult time for her at times, but, you know, like she was always super present and super like an ideal mum as well. But,
I remember you saying that she was quite like she did she was an awesome mum, but yet you had this
in every way. Maybe a sense of an emotional, maybe like it was a challenge for her emotionally, I'd imagine.
Of course.
But I feel I was a sensitive kid as well, and I think I did feel a lot, and I was pretty scared a lot, you know, as a young kid, which led me into, I guess, primary school experiences that were challenging.
Yes, I remember you saying that. Just that what you just said sparked a memory for me, because my mum was also alone. She raised us 3 siblings alone because my dad was in the army. So we hardly ever saw him, only during the holidays. And as a result, mum used to work from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening, and we hardly ever saw her because she was trying to, look after us. We were raised by our grandmothers, actually, more by the grandmothers and all the other people in our neighborhood, like elder people in the neighborhood. But so it's and it's when you understand our parents' background and what they came from as well, it leads to understanding how they are as adults, you know. And it was a huge, big eye opener for me when I found when my dad passed on his 6 weeks before he passed. I had quite a powerful experience with him, and then I realized, gosh, I didn't even get to know my father before he passed, and so I decided I was going to get to know my mum, who was left behind, and I did, and I fell in love with my mother when I was intentional trying to get to know her. So tell me about. So you said you finished, and your dad got posted then to Melbourne with BHP.
Yeah, he had an offer.
Yes.
With head office. Yeah, doing drafting, and so he took that. So we moved from Whyalla to Melbourne.
And what was that like for you?
I was probably 7, something like that. Yeah.
So you've got all your childhood friends over there in Whyalla, and was it a difficult move from Whyalla to Melbourne?
Well, I think because of my sensitivity.
Yes.
Primary school in Whyalla, it was only 1 year. There was already some experiences there were quite unsettling, and then the move itself to Melbourne on top of that, it was difficult. We're also leaving family.
Correct. Yeah, because your 2 grandmothers and
both sets of grandparents as well. Yeah,
correct. And when you moved to Melbourne, you were in grade 2.
It would have been grade 1. I think I was prep.
Yes.
In Whyalla, and then grade 1 in Blackburn. Yeah, it was the area. It's like similar to Kenmore in Brisbane, a similar kind of vibe.
And how was your first day of school in Melbourne?
The first day you remember. Carolyn remembers the story.
Well, it's not something to laugh about, but share with us.
If I only could have laughed back then, it would have changed the dynamic of it. Yeah, so I turned up to the first day of primary school, grade 1, in my new school, and I walked in the room and everyone just started laughing, at me. I didn't.
Why is that?
I didn't understand why until they explained. They basically were laughing at my appearance. I was, the eyes that I have now basically were the same size in grade 1. They haven't grown, but the rest of my body was like half the size. So I had massive eyes. So they called me goggles, and apparently I was quite funny to look at, a bit disproportionate.
Right.
Is what
I can't even imagine that because your eyes don't look.
My body's caught up with my eyes. Yeah. So I'm owning my goggles now. Yeah.
Right.
But they called me goggles, and that was given what had happened and all the moving and probably the stress of all that. Like that just really changed my life in a not so great way. But these things happen for reasons, I guess. Or if not, you can kind of in life build up from them, but
I remember growing up in India, and I'm just, again, when we share, we spark memories for us. For me, I have an older sister and a younger brother, and we had names for each other. These names are not given to us by friends and school. We did get other names from them, but in the house, my name was Mooney. Because I have a round face. And my sister, if I didn't share my clothes with her, she would dance around me and say, Mooney is a meanie, Mooney is a meanie.
Yeah.
And I would feel really upset. And then her name was Pointy Nose because she had a pointy nose, and my poor brother had buck teeth. So we used to call him Buck Teeth. But we were so mean to each other. And, these names, and at those tender ages, young ages, I don't think we didn't have that awareness, I suppose. And so the kids in your school were equally,
I think it was that those traumatic, it's not so much about the moment, it's about the impact on the psyche and
correct,
and being laughed at in front of everyone, like the social anxiety of that. Like if it was just one kid picking me out, but that just kind of that.
But you took it and you really it impacted you, yes. But I remember you saying that you took that and then decided to really be the best version of you as well by joining sports, and you said, I'm going to kind of show them. In your mind, you might have not consciously done it, but tell us what you did to, what you did to combat that goggles name that you were sadly given.
Yeah, well, I inherited pretty good sporting prowess from my dad, probably. Like he's was always playing sports and always getting me into it, and so I just was good at that. So I thought, well, I'll just take that and try and be the best I can at that, and so they'll pick me on their teams, and so to get affirmation in that way. I mean, looking back on it, I think this is ways, like I said, with our psyche being damaged, we look for other ways to kind of repair the damage,
get approval,
and so it's not always, I mean, whilst that's healthy in a way, like it's not, there's also part of it that's like it's motivated out of a deficit feeling, like I'm not good enough, so I've got to prove myself that I can beat you at something, or so it kind of was good for me at the time, I guess, but it's not a good basis to build a self-esteem on.
Absolutely.
Like being good at stuff to get approval.
Yeah, because it's almost like a coping mechanism at the time, but we don't even realize that it's not coming from a conscious awareness place, but rather from an unconscious place of trying to get that approval.
Yeah,
So,
validation and all that, which is, people know and talk about this kind of stuff now.
Correct.
But at the time, back in this is in the 70s or early 80s, there wasn't so much psychologizing of life and understanding self and,
Yes. Yes. We've got plenty of, not only is it right out there, but there's plenty of avenues of how you can get access to it and understanding, which is, I think we're evolving as a species, which is what.
But it maybe goes too far as well. Maybe it can
True.
be overbalanced, but at least at least we've got more of a window.
Yes. And you can see why we do certain things and understanding where our personalities came and how they were formed and all of that, which parts were healthy and which weren't.
Yeah.
And then you went on to become vice captain or captain of your school or something.
Yeah. That was a turn of events.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to run for school captaincy, but a friend of mine and we just thought it was a joke. We just thought we'd nominate each other as a joke. Like,
really?
I didn't have a campaign. I wasn't trying to be school captain. It was just like a fun thing to do. But I think because I was quite good at sports, but I was also musically in all, like the school I went to was a music school. I don't think I told you about this.
No.
My dad is like a musician, like a lifelong musician, brass band player. Like he's a trumpet player.
Uh-huh.
So I grew up around music as well. So that I was kind of in with the music kids and with the sports kids, and I'd kind of get around a little bit the groups rather than being part of one group. So
So you're quite social at that age. If you can get around and move with different groups, you had a reasonable level of social skills.
I think I mentioned as well, when I was 14, I had like a life turning point spiritual experience, and that impacted the way I understood the world and myself, and as there were more friendships that were based on.
Can you just remind me of that, Marty? I do remember you saying that, but
So my mum, one thing about my mum that like was maybe the biggest gift in my life was that, and many gifts she's given me, but I think when we left Whyalla, we came to Blackburn, we didn't have friends and family around us like I mentioned that. And Mum was a committed Christian, so it was natural for her to connect us, to go to church and to connect us as with teenagers even from as kids we went to church. But throughout those years, she endeavored. She was an elder of the local Uniting Church, Blackburn North Uniting Church. So we were always made to go. And so we connected in, even though I didn't like it.
Yeah.
For most of my childhood, there was like a growing sense of belonging and connection, which was really healthy.
Yes.
But I think more to the point, getting to answer your question, there were youth workers at our church that were, I guess, presenting what we called they presented like a youth service, which was like a non-traditional approach to a church service that spoke more personally about and more relevantly about
made more sense
faith
to you.
And spirit. Mm-hmm. And people were sharing their faith journey and in ways that connected with, me and my friends, I guess. And so that we had a few of those services, and I was starting to think about spirituality and thinking about Christianity increasingly. And then one night, an older guy, would have been probably 20 years old, shared his story.
And how old were you?
I was 14.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was sharing his, I think at the time they called it testimony, which is his experience of Jesus and relationship with Jesus. And it sounded less like church and less like rules and more like an actual like spiritual experience,
right?
Like a relationship. He was speaking of it as a relationship, and I was like, wow. And I was already thinking about heaven and hell at that time in life. Things are very binary, and and I had a sense that there's like in that binary, in that simple way of thinking, like there's an in and an out, you know. I haven't retained that kind of theology, like, but back
at
then,
that time it made sense for you.
It made sense, or it was like, well, what if there is a hell? And so, yeah, I was really interested, and I just thought one night I'll read the Bible, and I just picked a part of the Bible. It was Revelations, which is the last book, which is like real, like, probably the most mythological and hectic kind of passage. It's like
what does
all this
it say?
symbology in it. This is
you remember?
So much symbology in it. Like it's hell and damnation. A lot of that stuff,
right?
And what's going to happen in the future if you're on the right side. You know, you're good. Gosh. If you're on the wrong side, look out. Like that's what I recall. I mean, I haven't really read my Bible too much.
But what was that feeling? Is that experience you said where you were kind of quite?
Oh yeah. So there's a passage. It's Revelation 3:20.
Right.
Which is basically from memory. Jesus says, "Here I am. I stand at the door and knock, and those who hear the knock and answer the door, I'll come in and sup with them or dine with them and them with me." Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, that sounds pretty simple. Like all I need to do is listen and open the door.
Right.
Yeah. So
were you in a point in your? I suppose you were searching for some way of connecting to the divine or something. Is that what you're saying? Like you were.
I think I was feeling like
trying to make sense of what you're.
I think I was feeling at that point in life. You're starting to, as an adolescent, you're starting to think about morality. Starting to think about what is the right way, and I felt
questioning
like,
it.
Yes. And I felt like probably, and sexuality is coming up as a young man. Back then, like sexuality was, this is like in the 80s. It was starting, like there was a lot more happening, in society, like with media and imagery. And so I was probably looking back on it, just like wondering I was probably feeling some kind of guilt about being sexual, which is just, shame around that, which is sad, but it's, growing up around the church, probably I was also kind of feeling a bit of guilt and whatever.
Definitely.
Feeling like maybe I need some kind of support or help here to kind of stay on the right side of, like I'm not saying.
So how did that help you? As in.
Yeah. Well, anyway. So what I'm getting at is I heard the knock. Like I read that chapter that took me all night. Like I was like 14. I'm reading this. Like, and I was feeling already like a sense of it, of like a mystical, like I don't know how to explain it. It's
you're going good.
How would you put it? Like a out of body experience, and that, but in body, more metaphysical, not just in my normal state. I wasn't in a normal state of consciousness. I was shifting into a like you're
not confined in the body.
Yeah, I was a bit. Yeah, and so when I went back to that passage, because I read that in that chapter 3, verse 20, that one about I'm at the door and I knock. I went back to that and I reread that passage, and then I said, well, I want to open the door, like, and I want you to come in. So I invited Jesus into my life, and that was a very ecstatic experience, And
that's when you said you felt this overwhelming sense that you felt a strong sense of love for everyone.
Well, I felt like light and love and all the things that you might, like people might describe that in Buddhism. They might describe that in different ways in Hindu religion or in very many,
possibly every religion explains that we are all one and we're all love, and you've kind of experienced it.
So I don't see it as like, Christianity is the only way to experience the love of God, or however you understand God, like, or describe God. But I think it's the one love, like it's the one light, and it's who we are by nature, and it's our ultimate connection. We're not just meant to be thinking about connection, and I'm just thinking about like disconnection, connection.
Yes.
We're not meant. I don't think we're meant to just be theorizing or theologizing or psychologizing is the latest thing about it. We're meant to be actually experiencing
Correct.
the wonder of the light of love in our lives, and there's more to us than probably what we realize. And I think as a young fella, that I felt that in my body.
Wow.
And that just blew me open, and I felt like, well, like life
That's
is amazing, and I felt free, and I felt like much more like ready.
And do you think you went from there to doing your youth work? Was that youth work like a result of the experience that you had, Marty? Like you wanted to be in service and, help other kids and stuff. I remember you said you took quite an active role.
I had that fire in my belly.
Yeah.
I understood it when I was younger, more through a more conservative evangelical framework.
Yeah.
So I understood it to be like, well, I've got Jesus now. Now my friends need Jesus, and they just need to ask him into their lives, and he. You know what I mean? So it was through a evangelical lens that for the first few years, and then I was one thing about our church, we were blessed with two sets of youth workers. The first set were the evangelical ones, and they had all this teaching, which was very like where we'd be looking at the Bible, talking about, modern life and how Jesus's example is relevant on a more personal faith and spiritual journey. And then when they finished up, and then I was about like 17 when another couple, one of these youth workers became my mentor throughout my late teens and 20s, and is a good friend now. And he was studying community development, and so his approach to Jesus was more the social gospel, which is and discipleship, which is basically looking at Jesus's life as a blueprint for getting involved in action in the world to bring about
so more practical,
bring about justice and peace and non-violence and
social justice perspective.
So Greg's approach was this is my mentor. His approach was a lot more about how do we apply this in real world, and reach out and love people and be compassionate to people that maybe are suffering.
And you resonated with that, the latter.
Yeah, we were on a learning curve, I guess.
Right.
Who's
and I remember we? What do you mean the we?
Yeah, my friends and I that were involved with Blackburn North Uniting. There was a bunch of us, about maybe 10 or 12 of us, that we went to youth group together, and then Greg invited us to start to be part of the leadership team for the youth group. But we were kind of like changing. I guess we were going through all this change of understanding of what faith is, which was quite a big thing for
young
kids
teenagers,
that age, to be almost like re-evaluating the basis of our theology together over that period. Yeah, it was quite radical in a way, like pretty unique, like a real gift.
Like beyond your years almost in a way.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the timeline of yours from being called Goggles to here you are as a young youth worker, like taking on a high level of responsibility to then give back to other youth in your community over there. And how would you obviously would have felt a lot more connected in the younger youth years, given you had all these people around you and had that awakening of feeling an overwhelming sense of love and stuff. From there to then you said, I remember you saying you were in you were working with one youth group, and then the status quo of your church didn't quite agree with your methodologies of how you all were working. Is that correct? Did I remember that? And then you decided to move across the road or something to another
because
group?
Greg invited us to, this is the youth worker at our church. He invited us to direct the projects that we were running. He was asking us more or less, what do you guys want to do? How do you guys want to do it? And then we were reading different, not just theologians, but also.
So this was in the
this is in the Uniting Church. Yeah. And so a lot of what we came up being young and being, I guess, conscientized in a way, which is like
what do you mean conscientized?
Conscientized is it's a word for basically like the lights coming on to the bigger picture of where you fit and where things, like we were starting to it's education basically.
Yes,
it's basically education, like opening
awakening to something or yourself.
But I think if you go and study any course, the best courses will help you see where you fit, like if you, particularly in the Bachelor of Arts or in social sciences I studied, like why do we have the economy we have? Where did that come from? And society,
awareness.
how is it? Yeah, so it's looking at like a bird's eye view at the social structures and the economic structures and even the religious structures of like, so in our assessment, once the lights came on and we could see above our situation, get out of the where you
down,
you don't know that you're in a you're actually one of many in this system. But when you're helped to see above it and you can see, you look down and go, oh, this is why that happened, and this is how come my mum and dad believe this, or why the church have prioritized this, and you know what I mean.
So that's how do you spell that?
Conscientization, yeah.
Conscientization.
Yeah, it's that process of education where you see yourself in the system and you can
makes sense to you.
Oh, now, so we're here. We can actually be here, but that's challenging the church. That's challenging the status quo.
Yes.
And doing things differently. But being young and like ready
rebellious.
To change stuff, like we were like, let's go and do it. And so a lot of what we were doing was confronting for the church.
Radical.
Even though our church, there were amazing people there. There were a lot of elders that were supportive of what we're doing. There was also a bunch that were like, no, churches for, hymns and complying to, normal society values.
Yeah,
whereas we were like, no, Jesus was against that. Jesus was up against. Okay, that's why they crucified him, because he challenged.
He was a radical.
The systems, So we were like, we're with him. We're doing this. If you want to support us, like get behind it. If you don't, then we'll go somewhere else. So we did. We went across the road.
You jumped ship.
I'm not proud of it necessarily. I'm not saying that we should do that. But, and I know that it caused a lot of pain, and there was loss. But when you're young, you just sometimes you just go, well, let's make it happen. So we went to the Anglican church, which is diagonally opposite, and they were keen to support what we were doing, the work we were doing. So
But that would have been a time in your life when you're quite well connected and supported. Yeah, those youth years of yours. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was in some ways. I would say 100%. I've looked for that connection throughout my life, and it's never been like that. Like
as what you had
it's
then?
a grief. Yeah, I grieve that level of
of
cohesion and excitement of like, we're doing this, and I believe
on purpose.
I believe we can. It's possible I can experience that again, and maybe greater. But it's
then
you can't recreate it. You've just got to. Yeah, be ready for what's now,
Correct. You had that experience, which was rich in itself. So
very formative. Yeah.
Correct. And you still have some relationships from there that you're in touch with some of those boys, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember you saying that. So that's pretty amazing.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
That's so amazing that to be still in touch with your teenage friends.
I mean, we left uni courses. We had parents going, "What are you doing? Like, you're going to waste your life." Like we sold things, possessions, and gave things, and like we tried to do what Jesus said to do. Like maybe other
And you'll then you remember you saying you'll all shared you'll cohabited together in like a communal.
Yeah, we started some houses, like we called them intentional communities, where we intentionally sought to support growth and support like reaching out to those around us, growing veggies, going to rallies like Action Against, say the Indonesian invasion of Timor back then was one that we were pretty active in politics as well.
And how old were you then, Marty?
That was between 19 and 25, those Blackburn years. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
I remember when I was 24, I was still living with my mother. I was quite a sheltered young woman, and I got married and came here to Australia from my mother's home to Australia. So I admire people that have brought, like my kids, my son Daniel, whom you know, left my home at 18, and I was like, oh my God, he's going out. But in Australia, you can't do anything about it because at 18 you're an adult. So for me, it was quite a confronting thing that my son wanted to move out on his own. But yeah, that's amazing. So 26, you're living in a house with a bunch of other young men doing the work of your soul and
wasn't just
souls.
young men, but yeah, there was men and women. Yeah.
Men and women. Sorry, mistake there. And
no, that's fine.
you were kind of on purpose because you're almost like on a mission to make a difference in the world and help other youth and stuff. And I remember you saying you all even took in a kid or a guy that was was up to criminal stuff, and you all kind of housed him to see whether you could help him. Is that did I get that right?
Yeah, I was working with an organization that were housing young people that are coming out of detention center, like a halfway house, and so we started a new style halfway house to support those young people. Yeah,
that's amazing. At 20,
pretty hectic.
21 to 24.
Yeah, in those, around.
And you started uni, but then you stopped because you found that was didn't quite cut it for you. But you
like I started music performance at the College of the Arts, studying jazz trombone. Yeah, I was a trombonist. I still am, but.
So do you still play? Do you play now?
My Instagram's Marty Bones.
Oh,
Marty
is that
Bones.
right?
Yeah,
trombone player. I've got to follow you.
Yeah, so I did a year of jazz at VCA. Then I realized I didn't want to be a career musician, but I wanted to do youth work, and I was missing having that full-time focus. Yeah.
Wow. And then I think from there you told me, you said you decided to move up to Brisbane. So tell us about that. What had you come here to Brisbane?
Yeah, a few of us from our youth community in Blackburn had done the Waiters Union orientation course. Right. Which is a 2-week live-in experiential journey of how to apply grassroots Christianity in a practical way in a neighborhood.
Okay.
So that course was running for many decades, probably 3 or 4 decades. Maybe, I don't know if it still is. But so we came up, a bunch of us came up to do that course in West End. And that's where, I met my former wife and many friends that I still have around West End,
And made West End now Brisbane is your home, obviously. So how long have you been in Brisbane?
Brisbane since, I guess, 97 full-time, 1995 for 1 year. So after the course, I went back to Melbourne, and then I had a couple more years in Melbourne, and then I decided to do the 1 year internship, which was like an offering that Waiters Union had, which was actually it was an intentional community house they had here.
Yeah. And then you said we have to wrap up
Move
soon
forward,
because we're running out of
Going
time
deep.
over here. But I think I'd love to hear about Blackstar, your cafe. How did that start, and what did you have any during COVID? Did you have any challenges?
So skipping a few steps here, so my baby mama and I started Blackstar.
Who's your baby mama?
Baby mama, my kid's mom.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we started Blackstar together.
Yes.
We had 13 years of marriage, and we were very plugged into the local community. And we actually ran that course in the end for maybe 7 or 8 years. We were running the Waiters Union course, and all manner of mission, projects and activist projects and growing veggies, and people would come and drop into the house. But I was studying the social science, community development, and looking more at we need to start businesses that represent our values and that are more thinking about the planet and thinking about community and inclusion. That are more about connection, not just about profits.
Correct.
So I was studying that. I was on a mission to do that as my career path or life path. And Ruby's Yeah, and my former wife is quite entrepreneurial and very into food and connection and so we decided we were inspired by friends in New Zealand that started People's Coffee, which is a fair trade roastery in Wellington. We also had my former wife's cousin running a very successful cafe here in West End. No, not in West End, in the Valley. So yeah, we decided to do Blackstar because it just seemed to be like it was almost obvious and so many flows and so many easy. It's just serendipity, really. It's just.
And did COVID affect you all much? Because I don't. It was just before COVID you started or something. Oh no, way before.
We started 2007.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of support for what we were doing because of that base we had in West End, you know? Like,
yeah. Did it affect you all, COVID?
Oh, sorry, COVID. Yeah. So COVID, skipping, it's hard to talk about this stuff and skip so many steps.
I know.
Yeah. But anyway, let's go there. So COVID, we were heavily, now we're talking business.
Yeah.
We were heavily CBD based.
Right.
And CBD people didn't come to work on Mondays and Fridays, but you got to keep paying rents. So COVID was devastating for our model. Our business model was it wasn't going to survive that. So we ended up having to change the business model completely. That's been a journey of like 3 or 4 years, but I'd say the business model before, even without COVID, was not making much money. It's a competitive space, coffee roasting and cafes. There's millions of cafes. So in the end, I've, like a lot of things in life, I've learned like from a lot of mistakes, and COVID actually gave us, it was a blessing and a curse. It gave us the opportunity because things had to change.
Yeah.
And people were okay with business owners making drastic decisions. So I had to make some drastic calls with the support of my mentors and advisors. We had to let a lot of our staff go. We had to do a lot of deals to try to get out of rents in the city, and basically we just jettisoned a whole lot of stuff that was probably never going to make money anyway, and ended up with a much smaller but more sustainable and viable model, which we can build on.
Done.
So yeah, we've kind of come out of it
done. And I
pretty
think
well.
you're in a good place now from what I see, and when I come there to Blackstar as well, it seems like quite a little buzzing place, and as you said,
my staff is so amazing. I'm so blessed.
Yes.
They're really like behind me, and
look, you've
committed.
done the whole circle from goggles to Blackstar. Well done, Marty. If you had to, I mean, I've, just from what I'm hearing, your whole story over here, you've had a lot more connection in your life than disconnection. Am I right? Given your youth work and even as a young child, apart from when you were in the cot and then as in goggles in your early years of school, apart from that, you've been fairly connected most of your life because you were as a youth worker and then coming to Brisbane and being part of an intentional community here and all of that. And then I think you said all your connections helped you through your challenges during COVID as well with Blackstar. Is there, like, would you change anything in your life if you could?
I've thought about this question. It's one of those tricky questions. I mean, knowing what I know, there's some things I wouldn't do again.
Yes. Give us a 30 second punchline to end this session today.
What I wouldn't do again?
Yes. What would you change if you could?
I think I'd listen to elders more. And if I didn't have elders to listen to, I'd find the elders to listen to more.
Nice.
Because there's a real lack of eldership, but they are out there. And then they've done the things that you could avoid doing and learn from them. So you can kind of fast track and avoid some of the hurt and pain by listening
beautiful.
And being humble.
Thank you
not
so
just
much,
thinking
Marty.
that you've got it.
Yeah, no,
I just think I've always thought I've got this, you know.
Yes.
Being a bit too
We can be
cocky.
a little bit arrogant and in our ego selves when we're younger, and then I think wisdom comes with age. That's not fair. We should have wisdom when we're young.
Maybe I overcompensated for the goggles thing and got a little bit too ahead of myself at times. But,
Well, it's been so lovely to chat with you today, Marty,
Yeah,
and I'm
thanks for
sure.
having me.
Yes, no, my pleasure, and I hope you're not as nervous as when you started. How are you feeling now?
I was okay.
Okay, wonderful.
I just had to own that. But yeah, it's all
Great.
good. Thank you.
Well, I'll see you at Blackstar, I'm sure, soon.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much.